It was a cold, quiet evening when the envelope arrived. Lana Cross had just settled into her usual evening routine, a glass of red wine and a book she had been meaning to finish for weeks, when the knock at her door startled her. She wasn't expecting visitors. Her neighborhood was known for its tranquility. No one showed up unannounced, especially not after dark. When she opened the door, there was no one there, only the sound of the wind brushing through the trees. But at her feet lay a single black envelope, matte and unnervingly pristine, with no stamps or markings other than her name written in sharp, bold letters, Lana Cross. Her first instinct was to leave it there, to lock the door and forget about it, but curiosity got the better of her. She brought it inside, the weight of the envelope oddly heavy for its size. Breaking the seal revealed a thick black card with gold lettering etched into its surface. You have been selected. Midnight. Be ready. Instructions will follow. The words sent a shiver down her spine. There was no sender, no explanation, and no way to respond. Lana flipped the card over, searching for any other clue, but it was blank. By the time she looked at the clock, it was already 11:15 p.m. The thought of ignoring the ominous message crossed her mind, but the idea of not knowing what would happen was almost worse than the cryptic invitation itself. She had no enemies, no debts, and lived a simple, unremarkable life. Why her? She decided to stay awake, her heart racing with every tick of the clock. When the clock struck midnight, nothing happened at first. She exhaled, almost laughing at herself for giving in to paranoia. But then her phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. Hesitating, she answered. "Hello?" She whispered into the receiver. "Open your door, Lana," a deep, dispassionate voice said. Her blood turned to ice. The line went dead before she could respond. Against every instinct screaming at her to stay put, she approached the door. Her trembling hand turned the knob, and when she opened it, the street outside was deserted, bathed in the pale glow of the streetlights. But at her feet was another envelope, this one larger and heavier than the first. It was sealed with an intricate wax crest she didn't recognize. Inside was a folded map and a single line of text. You have until 1 a.m. Arrive or face the consequences. Lana's eyes darted to the map, which marked a location deep in the woods outside of town. The message didn't explain what the consequences would be, but she felt certain she didn't want to find out. The map was crude but clear, a single trail leading to a spot marked with an ominous black X as... Lana's first thought was to call the police. But what would she say? That someone had delivered mysterious instructions, complete with threats, and she was planning to follow them. The idea sounded absurd even to her. Her clock read 12:20 a.m. She had 40 minutes. The weight of the second envelope pressed in her hands, a physical reminder of the ultimatum. Something about it felt final, like whoever sent this wasn't bluffing. Lana grabbed her coat, a flashlight, and her car keys. Against every shred of logic, she decided to go. She couldn't explain why, but a gnawing feeling inside her told her she wouldn't escape this by staying put. Maybe if she went, she'd find answers. The drive was eerily quiet. The streets of her small town were deserted, and the only sound was the hum of her engine. The route on the map led her to a side road that quickly turned into a narrow dirt path. She parked her car at the edge of the woods. The rest of the journey would have to be on foot. The flashlight's beam bounced with every step she took, illuminating the narrow trail that cut through the towering trees. The woods were alive with the rustle of leaves and the occasional snap of a twig. Every sound made her flinch, her paranoia growing with each passing second. At 12:50 a.m., she reached the marked spot, a clearing with a single wooden table in the center. On the table was a black box, as sleek and ominous as the envelopes. A dim lantern hanging from a branch provided just enough light to cast long shadows that made the clearing feel alive. Lana approached cautiously, her breath fogged in the chill night air. As she reached for the box, her flashlight flickered, then died. She froze, every hair on her body standing on end. The dim lantern barely lit her surroundings, but she could swear she saw movement in the trees, shapes shifting just out of sight. Her trembling hands opened the box. Inside was another note. "You've made the right choice. Welcome. This is only the beginning." Before she could make sense of the words, a sound came from behind her, the unmistakable crunch of leaves underfoot. She spun around, but the lantern's light was too dim to reveal anything beyond the immediate clearing. "Who's there?" she called, her voice cracking. Silence, then a whisper, low and almost imperceptible. It's too late to turn back. Panic surged through her, and she stumbled back toward the table. That's when she noticed something else inside the box, a small black key, smooth and cold to the touch. As her fingers wrapped around it, a new sound broke the stillness. A phone vibrating, her phone. Except it wasn't hers. A black flip phone lay on the ground near the table, its screen glowing. Against her better judgment, she picked it up and pressed it to her ear. "Good evening, Lana." The same dispassionate voice from earlier greeted her. "You've proven yourself worthy of the next step. The key unlocks your future. But beware, every door comes with a cost." The line went dead. Lana's mind raced. She looked at the key in her hand, then at the shadows surrounding her. The question wasn't whether she wanted to continue. It was whether she had a choice. Lana stood frozen in the clearing, the phone's lifeless screen reflecting the faint glow of the lantern. Her breath came in short, panicked bursts. The key felt heavier in her hand now, as if it carried an unspoken weight. The voice on the phone had been cold and commanding, yet eerily calm, like someone used to giving orders. The shadows seemed to press closer as she tried to gather her thoughts. What did they mean by the next step, and what door was this key meant to unlock? Her flashlight was still dead, and the weak light of the lantern wasn't enough to shake the oppressive darkness surrounding her. Then she saw it. At the edge of the clearing, where the trees thickened into an almost impenetrable wall of black, a shape began to emerge. A door. It hadn't been there moments ago, she was sure of it. It stood tall and freestanding, unattached to any structure, as though it had been dropped there by some unseen force. Its surface was made of smooth, polished wood, so dark it seemed to drink in the faint light from the lantern. A small lock gleamed in the center. Lana's legs felt like lead, but something pulled her toward it. She reached out a trembling hand and ran her fingers over the cool, flawless surface of the wood. There was no handle, no hinges, just the lock, waiting for the key. The voice from the phone echoed in her mind. "The key unlocks your future, but beware. Every door comes with a cost." Her instincts screamed at her to turn back, to flee into the safety of the night. But the questions burned too hot. She had come this far. What if the cost had already been paid, and there was no turning back now? With a deep breath, she slid the key into the lock. The click of the mechanism was deafening in the silence. The door swung inward on its own, revealing an impossibly dark void. It wasn't just shadow. It was an absence, a space so empty it made her stomach churn. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a faint glow began to pulse from within, illuminating a narrow hallway lined with black stone. As the light grew stronger, shapes began to appear on the walls. They were photos, hundreds of them, each perfectly framed. Lana's heart stopped when she recognized the first one. It was of her. She was sitting on a park bench, a cup of coffee in hand. She had no memory of anyone taking it. She stepped inside, her hand brushing the edge of the door as if to steady herself. The next photo was also of her. This time she was at her office typing at her desk. She moved farther down the hallway, her unease growing with each new image. Someone had been watching her for years, documenting her every move. The hallway ended at another door, smaller this time, with a glowing symbol etched into its surface, a triangle within a circle. As she reached for it, the lantern behind her flickered and died, plunging her into near total darkness. Only the faint glow of the door's symbol remained. Before she could open it, a voice echoed down the hallway, louder than before. This time it wasn't from a phone. It was here, with her. "You've come this far, Lana, but every step forward demands a sacrifice. What are you willing to lose?" Her chest tightened as the temperature in the hallway seemed to drop. She felt a presence now, an unseen weight pressing down on her. The door in front of her began to vibrate, the glowing symbol pulsating like a heartbeat. And then, as if answering the voice's question, the floor beneath her shifted. The photos lining the walls fell into shadow, their frames twisting into jagged shapes. Behind her, the first door slammed shut, leaving her with a choice: turn back to the unknown behind her, or press forward into whatever nightmare awaited through the glowing door. With trembling fingers, Lana touched the symbol. The door creaked open, revealing the faint outlines of a room beyond. Her breath caught as she stepped through, the sensation of crossing a threshold unlike anything she'd ever felt. It was as if the air itself changed, heavier and charged with an electric tension. The room was empty, save for a single chair in the center and a camera mounted on a tripod. A small black envelope rested on the chair, waiting for her. The chair sat in the center of the room, bathed in a faint, unnatural light that seemed to come from nowhere. The black envelope on the seat was identical to the ones she'd received earlier, sleek, pristine, and ominously heavy. The camera on the tripod pointed directly at it, its lens like an unblinking eye. Lana hesitated. Every nerve in her body screamed for her to leave, to turn around and forget this nightmare. But the door behind her had vanished. The room was sealed, trapping her with only the envelope and the silent camera. She reached out, her fingers brushing the envelope's surface. It was cold to the touch. When she picked it up, the faint sound of gears clicking echoed through the room, as though the camera had sprung to life. She glanced at it, but saw no movement. It was as still as before, yet the sound persisted, like a mechanical heartbeat. With shaking hands, Lana broke the seal and slid the contents out. A single sheet of paper and a photograph. She unfolded the paper first, the words written in the same gold lettering as before. "The cost has been determined. Review your life. Decide your future. The camera will watch." Her breath caught as she turned her attention to the photograph. It was of her, but not a moment she recognized. She was sitting at her kitchen table, staring at another black envelope, the first one she had received. But in the background of the image, just outside her window, was the shadow of a figure watching her. The figure was indistinct, more of an outline than a person, but its presence was undeniable. Lana dropped the photo, her mind reeling. The paper's message echoed in her head. Review your life. Decide your future. What did that mean? What cost were they talking about? Before she could process it, the light in the room dimmed, and the camera whirred to life. Its lens adjusted, focusing on her. A low hum filled the air, vibrating through her chest. She felt exposed, as if the camera wasn't just watching her but seeing inside her, into her thoughts, her memories, her very soul. The walls of the room began to change, shifting and rippling like water. Images appeared, projected onto the black stone like a macabre slideshow. They were moments from her life, both mundane and significant. Her first day at college, her mother's funeral, a fight with her best friend she had never resolved, a decision to take the safe job instead of pursuing her passion, the time she lied to someone she loved. The scenes moved faster, blending into a chaotic montage that left her dizzy. The room seemed to shrink around her, the walls pressing closer, as if suffocating her under the weight of her own choices. The voice returned, deep and resonant, filling the space. Your life has led you here, Lana. Every decision, every mistake, this is your reckoning. She tried to speak, but no words came. The camera's hum grew louder, almost deafening, and then the room went silent. The final image projected on the wall froze her in place. It wasn't a memory. It was a future. Her future. She was sitting in the same chair, her face pale and lifeless. The black envelope lay open in her lap, and the shadowy figure from the photograph stood behind her, its hand resting on her shoulder. Her pulse raced, her vision blurring. She stumbled toward the walls, clawing at them, searching for any way out. The camera swiveled to follow her, its unblinking lens capturing every frantic move. "The choice is yours, Lana," the voice said. "Accept the cost, or forfeit everything." The envelope in her hand began to burn, the paper curling at the edges. She dropped it, but the words still burned in her mind. Her choices, her regrets, her fears, all of it had led her to this moment. But what was the cost, and what would happen if she refused? As the light dimmed further, and the walls seemed to close in completely, Lana knew there was no escaping the decision. The voice came one last time, quieter now, almost a whisper. "Choose, Lana, before the shadows take you." The room felt alive now, pulsing with an energy that Lana couldn't comprehend. The walls rippled like liquid, the images fading into darkness, leaving only her reflection, distorted and fragmented, staring back. The black envelope lay in smoldering pieces at her feet, the faint scent of burnt paper lingering in the air. Her heart thundered as the voice returned, steady and unrelenting. "Time is running out. What will you sacrifice, Lana? Your past, your present, or your future?" The words sent a chill through her. How could she possibly choose? Her past was a part of who she was, her present, the fragile life she had built, and her future, the unknown she had yet to claim. Each option felt like a death sentence in its own way. The camera's lens refocused, with a mechanical whir, locking onto her once more. She felt its gaze, cold and penetrating, waiting for her answer. "Why me?" she finally managed to croak, her voice trembling. "What is this? What do you want from me?" For the first time, the voice softened, almost sounding human. "You are chosen because you live in the in-between, neither bold nor timid, neither a leader nor a follower. Your life has been one of hesitation, and yet the potential for greatness lingers within you. We demand only what you owe, nothing more." "Oh?" she repeated, shaking her head. "I don't owe anyone anything." "Every action carries a cost, Lana. Every choice, a consequence. You have taken more than you realize, now you must pay. Choose, or we will choose for you." The shadows in the room began to stretch, reaching toward her. They moved like living things, slithering closer with each passing second. The air grew colder, and her breaths came out in short, panicked gasps. The chair behind her creaked, as if beckoning her to sit. On instinct, she stumbled backward and collapsed into it, her hands gripping its edges as if anchoring herself in place. The moment she sat down, the camera clicked, its lens zooming in. A faint red light appeared on its side, blinking rhythmically. Your past, your present, or your future. Decide now. The question churned in her mind. Her past was full of regrets she didn't want to relive. Her present, though unremarkable, was still hers. And her future? What would it mean to give up something she hadn't yet lived? Finally, with her voice barely above a whisper, she spoke. Take my past. The shadows halted. The air around her grew impossibly still. The voice returned, triumphant yet detached. The past will no longer weigh you down. But remember, Lana, what is forgotten may return in ways you cannot predict. Before she could ask what that meant, the room exploded with light, blinding her. Images of her life flashed before her eyes, one by one. But this time, instead of watching them, she felt them being ripped away, like threads being pulled from a fragile fabric. Her childhood memories, her first love, her greatest failures, all of it vanished into the light. When the brilliance faded, she found herself alone in her living room. The clock on the wall read 1:03 a.m. The black envelopes were gone. The eerie voice and the camera, all of it, was as though it had never existed. At first, she felt relieved. She was alive. She had made it through. But as she looked around her home, unease began to creep in. Photos on the walls no longer held any meaning. Faces of people she knew she should recognize were now strangers. Even the books on her shelves seemed unfamiliar, as though she'd never read them. Her phone buzzed on the table, startling her. The screen lit up with a message from an unknown number. Your choice has been honored. But beware. The void left behind will not remain empty for long. She dropped the phone, her chest tightening with dread. What had she given up? What would take its place? From the corner of her eye she saw movement, a fleeting shadow in the reflection of the window. Spinning around, she found nothing there. But the feeling of being watched remained, lingering like a heavy fog. Lana had escaped the reckoning. Or had she merely invited something far worse into her life?